I think you touched on it earlier, even in passing, but I feel like at the root of all of this, the root of our inability or hesitation to confront myths is fear.
Yeah.
And specifically the fear that there is not enough grace for the truth.
Ooh, speak on it.
And there is an idea that we have that if we tell the whole truth, and if we are truth tellers to the extent to follow where truth leads us, that what we will find will be too complicated for God's grace. And I think deep down, I think this is why we conceal. I think this is why we hold things back, because we believe that on the other end of a radical confession and on the other end of seeing things as they are in the right context is not grace, but judgment.
Mm.
And we don't believe God's grace is sufficient.
Mm.
We don't believe that God's grace is sufficient even for the ugly truth.
Wow.
And it may not necessarily apply to Malcolm and Martin, but in many areas of our churches, communities, lives, we have held back from telling the whole truth because it has been convenient, but also because there has been this innate fear that if I tell the whole truth and if I see the whole truth and if I promote the whole truth, what will happen to me?
Yeah.
What will happen to them? What will happen to us?
That's right.
And what will happen to us is we'll find out just how sufficient grace really is. And we'll find out just how real God's presence really is. And again, I think this is so applicable because this is why we don't have time for this. This is why we get in front of people and don't tell them the truth about race and justice. Like, it is not simply the fear of preservation. It is the fear that we will be guilty of condemning them. This is why people say, "Oh, you're condemning people. Look at you're weaponizing division."
Huh.
And I'm like, if God's grace is that amazing and sufficient, then no matter what you say about what I've believed, which I didn't personally do, which is the gag, right? You didn't personally do it. I'm not saying you were a slaveholder. I'm not saying you were a slave master. I'm not saying you wrote the policy. I'm not saying you said the slur. I'm saying this might be something that we need to confront accurately so that we don't replicate this pattern and continue to disenfranchise and marginalize people sinfully over the course of generations.
Wow. Yeah.
But literally in your heart, you don't understand that grace is that amazing.
Wow.
And you don't understand that there is that much in God. This is why we tell the truth. We tell the truth because we believe that on the other end of the truth is a beautiful freedom and revelation of who God is and who we are in Christ and who Christ has made us to be. And there's that understanding of that reality that I think we are just not confronting. And there's just this fear. And the fear now of going back and saying, well, what did I get wrong because I believe this? There's grace for that. I think there are some people even that may be listening that may say, I believe things that I'm looking back on now and I'm ashamed. And I love this, that moment when the young man, I don't know which one it was, but one of the representatives in Tennessee, they found this old clip of him talking in a different way and talking about things in a different way. And they were like, it's some gotcha quote or some gotcha video. Look at what he was doing 10 years ago. And I'm like, dog, if you look at what I was doing 10 years ago, I don't even know if I'd be a pastor. Like, what in the world? Like, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, like what? Of course. But there's grace enough to change. And there's grace enough to grow. And there's grace enough to say, yeah, I believe that because it was comfortable. And I believe that because I trusted this person and they told me this and that. But now I can tell the truth about that. Now I can see what it really is. I think people need to hear that there's grace.
And people need to give grace too for that growth. So a lot of times when I kind of clench up sometimes in certain groups when I talk about my journey
Oh, here you go,
you know.
RTS, TGC.
Exactly.
Right.
Because people are like, you dummy, why did you expect any different? Why did you believe them? Why did you? I'm like, well, because they sold it well, because they
I'm
meant
human.
for you to believe it. And because I had these experiences in this relationship and XYZ, and I've learned and I've grown. Like, why? But it feels shameful, not just internally, but because of the way people react.
Yes.
Because they're not extending that
Yes.
grace for growth, right? And one of the things I always say about racists is like, I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time trying to debate or persuade people who are just dead set on harmful ideas. But I say I always leave the light on for you because there's room for growth.
It's here when you're ready.
It's here when you're ready. That's fine. You may have come from a certain spot, which is not healthy. It's not good. But
It's here when you're ready.
yeah.
The truth, and this is the beautiful, and I think this maybe is the point in the end. The truth is always here for us. And the myth is comfortable, but the truth is what'll set us free. And it's always here.